Good evening again, guys. Thanks for coming back. Hope all is well. Had a bunch of meetings this morning via Zoom, and a lot of new developments, but I'm sure you're going to be hearing about them from the school. Hopefully we're going to get through this soon. But anyway, as promised, this is Counseling 151, Career Life Planning, Part 2, Interests. And what we're going to be focused on today is going to be interpreting the second assessment we took, which is the self-directed search. Now, Belinda from the Career Center promised me that she will be sending this out sometime today through the night, and you should have it in your email by tomorrow sometime. So I am going to send this YouTube out tomorrow with the homework assignment, and you will have some time to complete that, but I'll send it out sometime in the later part of the morning, so you should have plenty of opportunity to have looked it over and evaluated it. Okay? So let's go ahead and start talking about this. Again, the interest assessments are important because we want to identify those things that we like to do. We don't want to find an occupation or a career that we're doing things we don't like. We're not going to be in them very long. So the self-directed search is developed by a famous career theorist, and you want to remember this name for the final examination. His name is John Holland. John Holland. And John Holland took all of the occupations in the United States, like the cops guy did, but this time John Holland said, each of these occupations, they have specific interests that are very similar among 6 different occupational theme areas. And those 6 different occupational theme areas are realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. And you notice that they are listed on a hexagon in the order of their relatedness. Just take note of that. We're going to come back to this in a second. Now, what Holland says, and this is important as well, so make note of it. His theory is, if you are to be happy and satisfied in an occupation over a long period of time, and I think we all want that, one must choose or select an occupation that matches or is congruent to your 3-letter code that is derived from the results of the self-directed search assessment. So what that means is that all of the occupations in the United States are going to be given a code, either by itself or the pure type of a code, such as a social occupation, but every occupation will probably have a combination of environments in it. And so to be happy and satisfied in that occupation over a long period of time, you should choose an occupation that matches your 3-letter code. And if I can have Pam locate that on the front page of your assessment here, is your results. And you'll note that over here is the results of your assessment, and this code, a 3-letter code, is what we call your primary code. And I'm going to write that in here, and I'm going to turn it around so you see it. That is your primary code. That means to be happy and satisfied in an occupation over a long period of time, we need to find occupations that have these 3 environments in it: social, artistic, and enterprising. Okay? Now, over to the left of that is a depiction of the results of your assessment. And over here are the realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional occupational themes. These are your answers or the results of your interests in each of those theme areas. So, these codes here are called the RIASEC codes. Thus, it's an acronym for, a mnemonic for RIASEC, RIASEC codes. Easy way to remember the 6 different environments. Okay? Now, you can see, based on the results here, and these is your standard scores over here. Okay? Now, this particular person, his highest theme area was social, and it was 53. So 53, showing here, shows that this person has a very strong interest in those occupations that tend to be more social. Okay? I'm not going to spend a long time talking about the characteristics of each of these codes in this particular assessment. I will, however, spend more time talking about those when we talk about personality next week. Okay? But there is a brief description of these in your profile when you get them. But you can see social is the highest rated occupational theme area, thus being the first letter of this 3-letter code. We call that code your dominant code. Dominant code. And dominant meaning it's the one theme that you are really interested in, therefore you should have that contained in your particular occupation that you are exploring. Okay? Now, the 3-letter code here, again, is called the primary code. So primary code and dominant code. Okay? So in order for someone to be happy and satisfied in an occupation over a long period of time, one needs to find an occupation that contains the code SAE. But it doesn't just have to be SAE, okay? This can have, as long as any of the 3 environments are in it, is what he's trying to tell you. So there's 5 different ways to write SAE. And I'm going to flip this page for 2 seconds. There's SEA, there's EAS, there's ESA, there's ASE, and AES, and I'm going to show you this right here. There are 6 possible different ways of actually combining those codes and including them all. And we call those codes permutations. And I'm going to write that permutations. Permutations. So that's another important thing to remember. So we have your primary code, which is the natural way the 3 environments came out based on your results. We have your dominant code, which is the theme area that was most dominant or your highest score in the social theme area, in the occupational theme areas. And we have the 6 different combinations of that primary code, which are called permutations. And one more time, and you notice how I'm emphasizing this, because this is important. In order to be happy and satisfied in an occupation over a long period of time, John Holland says that you should select an occupation, choose an occupation that is congruent to your primary code or one of its 5 other permutations of that code. Because these are environments that lend itself to those things that you like to do. Okay? Now, as we look at this assessment, you just notice the scores. Notice the scores. And you'll notice that some of these scores, and let's just take a look at the 4th score, SAE, and I'm going to have to take a quick peek at this for a second. Hang tight. SAE, and E being the 3rd highest, which is 38. And then you have, okay, I'm going to flip it around again here for you, Pam. Investigative was the 4th highest. I just want to point this out. Your E being 38, your investigative being 34. I'm just pointing that out because some of you may have only a 1 point difference between your third and fourth, and therefore you may want to expand your code to include a fourth letter if you need to. Especially if you're not finding occupations that are of interest to you with the primary code, you might want to go ahead and switch out the third for the fourth letter just to see if there's some kind of interest there that are greater than the primary code. Okay, so what we've done for you by the computer is we've taken those occupations in the United States and we have listed those under My Occupational List. And it starts on the first page, and I'm going to flip the page here for a second, and it's going to continue on the next few pages. Some of you, fewer pages than others, but some of you, you're going to have quite a few pages. And you can see, and I'm going to turn this back, you can see that there are a list of occupations. These occupations and the following pages are occupations that are in these 6 different possible permutations of that primary code, SAE. So your assessment is going to have your dominant, your primary code, and all of the occupations that would be included in that primary code and the permutations of that code. And they're listed on the next few pages. Now, here's where I want you to understand something. And I'm going to put this hexagon back up for a second. I told you that John Holland's theory is that in order to be happy and satisfied in an occupation over a long period of time, one needs to find an occupation that has a congruent code to your primary code. That is true. But I also want you just to understand for a minute that the order of these occupational themes on this hexagon indicate their order of relatedness. So one might have a code that is congruent on the hexagon. And thus, I'm going to tell you right now, this young lady's was S, E, and A. Social, enterprising, artistic. You'll note that those 3 letters and theme areas are congruent next to each other on this hexagon. Thus, the number of occupations that are on her assessment, I'm going to flip this just like this, the number of assessments on her occupations under My Occupational List are going to be a lot more generous. In other words, there's going to be a lot more of them than if somebody had a 3-letter code, a primary code, if you will, that was not congruent on the hexagon. For instance, if hers was SRI, it shows that these are not congruent because socials would be here, realistic and investigative, they're not next to each other. So therefore, the chances of having a lot more occupations on her list are not going to be great because there's stuff that aren't related. So that might explain why one person might have a lot of occupational titles on theirs, like this one, versus somebody who might have 1 page of occupations because their code was not congruent on the hexagon. But that doesn't matter. His theory is that one must choose an occupation that is congruent to your primary code, okay, and or one of the permutations of that code. Now, I've hit that pretty hard, that theory, so I hope you take note of that and write it down somewhere because you're going to see it again, maybe in your final examination, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at the occupational list for this young lady, okay? And it shows these occupational titles here, and to the right of them, it's going to show you the code that that particular occupation incorporates, okay? It'll start off usually as you look at the list, it's got all of the combinations of your primary code. So there won't be any other letter in that primary code for those occupations, okay, that are going to be other than those three. So they'll all be there. That's all it's going to include, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead, and we've done this before, is with a highlighter, and you get to pick your color, with one highlighter, you're going to go ahead and start with that list, and you're going to go through this list, and you're going to highlight all of the occupational titles that sound interesting to you, okay? I am not asking you if you're good at it. I'm not asking if you're not good at it. I'm asking you, does it sound like something you would like to do? Are you interested in it? Please, that's all, okay? And you're going to do all of them. List all of them. Highlight all of them that you're interested in or sounds interesting to you, okay? Then, using a different color highlighter, as we did in the previous assessment with the cops, you are going to highlight any of the occupational titles that you have never heard of, have no idea what it does, or can't pronounce it. Okay, because we don't want to eliminate those until we've done a little bit of research to find out what they actually do, and then we can eliminate or still include it. Okay, so two things: highlight those that sound interesting to us, and with another color, we're going to highlight only those that we have absolutely no idea what that occupation does, or we cannot pronounce it. Okay, now it'll also tell you how much education is required for each of those occupational titles under the educational required column there, okay? And that's all we really care about is the code, the title, and how much education is required. Now, as we proceed through the assessment, Pam, if you can get this down here, you're going to come to the second part of this assessment, which is called My Occupational Daydreams. Now, I don't know if you remember this or not, but when you took this assessment, you were asked to select those occupations that you kind of dreamed about becoming, regardless of having any background in taking this assessment, interest, or any other thing. So you typed in occupational titles that you thought that you might be interested in doing or thinking about. Those will be listed at the top here. My Daydreams occupation. And this particular person put teacher, pediatrician, psychologist, musician, surgeon, and writer. That's what they put down without taking this test, before they took the test or anything. So these are the daydreams that this person had. And over to the right are the Holland codes that fit those. Now, they didn't know anything about Holland codes, and they know nothing about the results of this assessment. And look what happened here, okay? This person, based on these daydreams, her themes came up to be SAE, the same code as what came out on her actual assessment, which I think is pretty neat. And so therefore, the occupations that are listed down below underneath her aspirations code, and that's what we call it the aspiration summary code, based on her aspirations, not on any results of any assessment. We have occupational titles listed down here, and it probably be for a page and a half you'll have them, okay? So, again, for homework, I want you to take the same color highlighter you used for the first part and go ahead and highlight all those occupational titles, okay, that are based on their aspirations code this time. And with the other color, any occupations that you cannot pronounce or you have no clue what they do. you're going to go ahead and just highlight those. Now, there might be some overlap with those occupations and the previous part, occupations, but that's okay. Just make sure that you highlight them. And remember that all we're doing right now is we're gathering information. The third step, of the decision-making model, just gathering information. We want to find out, and we're going to explore more about these occupational titles later when we get to the actual information stage. But right now, we're just generating a list, and we'll get to that other part later. So that's going to be your assignment. Now, when I give you the assignment, and I'll spell it out in an email to you tomorrow when you get it, please be aware that when I give you a deadline, you can surely hand that in to me earlier than the deadline. I noticed just a few people have turned in their homework that's due on Thursday from the cops, and it just helps me because I've got 150 people to grade. If you can turn that in as soon as you finish it, it would greatly be appreciated. Okay? Now, I figure that probably on Thursday of this week, you're probably going to get the third part of this particular lecture series on interest, where we're going to talk about the Strong's interest inventory. And again, that has already been emailed to you. You have that, and you'll have an opportunity to look that over. And I will put a link to an interpretation YouTube video that'll go with that. So you'll have that opportunity to do. But don't worry about that one right now. This is the second part, and we're going to do, that's the self-directed search, second part. That's all you have to do, and that's going to be due. Let's make this due on, Monday, okay? This one will be due on Monday, no later than Monday. Let me put it that way, okay? And then when we get to the Strongs, we'll make that due probably on Wednesday. So we'll keep a steady flow of work going, okay? So hopefully this is working. Hopefully you're understanding everything. It's the best way I know how to do this at this point. And so we will all get through this. Don't worry about your grade. I said that before. I'll probably say it 100 more times. Don't worry about your grade. Just bear with me. Do what you need to do, and the grade will come. Okay? So I bid a farewell to you this evening. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you later. Okay? Bye-bye.